Hello YouTube, XCT here. This video is about AuthBy, a medium difficulty Windows machine on PG Practice. It involves getting FTP access to the web root of a web application and uploading a PHP shell to get a foothold. For root, we'll exploit the SeImpersonate Privilege with Juicy Potato. So as always, we started with a port scan, and there are some pretty interesting results here. First of all, we have the ZFTP server on port 21 in a pretty old version. It's from 2011. And anonymous login is allowed, so we can log in and list the files here, but we can already tell from the ZenMap snippet that we don't have too much permissions here. We can't even read the files, right? But we'll explore that a bit more later on. On port 242, there's a pretty old version of Apache running with an old PHP version, but the site requires basic authentication. So we need some credentials there. There's ZFTP admin, whatever that is, and there's remote desktop. And apparently the name of this box was something else at some point in the past. So let's start by looking at the FTP server. Let's use anonymous here as password and username, and now we get to see the same results we had in Nmap, right? Let's look at the log directory. There's a lot of log files here which could potentially be interesting, but we aren't allowed to read them either. And there's also this accounts directory, and this tells us that a few other users exist, like offsec and admin. And if we actually try to connect again with the admin user and just use admin as a password, which is easily guessable, right? We can connect and we end up in a completely different directory. And there's an htpasswd file and an htaccess file here, which is pretty interesting. Let's get the index file first, see the contents. And yeah, this is the string we saw on the Nmap scan as well. It's this website on port 242, which has basic authentication. So let's grab the files here. All right. And now we should be able to read them. Let's look here. htaccess. We don't really learn anything interesting here, except that this is WAMP, which is a bit like XAMPP. I think it has a bit less features or something. I never encountered it before, to be honest. And there's this htpasswd file, which has a hash we might be able to crack, right? So let's try to crack that. And this indeed works. And if you're wondering what J is, it's just an alias to John with the rockq.txt wordless, so don't have to type it out all the time. So now we know to get around this basic auth, we need offsec and elite as a password. So let's try that. Since I already entered it before, it isn't asking me again. But yeah, just enter offsec and elite here. And we can see the contents of this index.php file now. So it would be cool if we could upload some PHP here, right? So let's create a really simple PHP payload. Just do echo like that, and it's just calling system on whatever we give it on this x parameter. And also let's copy an nc.exe file into the local directory, which we're going to upload as well, because I don't want to stay in this web shell. It can be a bit annoying. So we're going to upgrade it to a real shell, right? So let's connect again here. Let's see if we can upload our PHP file. That looks good. Let's upload nc.exe as well. Let's see. Both files are here. This looks kind of good. Let's see if it actually works. X equals who am I? And here we go. Remember, this is a Windows box, so we have to accommodate for that, right? So we are this Apache user. Guess we can list the web root here as well. Yep. This is a bit messed up here, so if you have this, you can always do view page source and you get a nicely formatted output from the web shell, right? So let's now use nc.exe to call back to our box. And you can see in the top right corner, this is my IP here. And we want to call cmd. Of course, we need the listener. Here we go. We got our shell and we are this Apache user like we expected. So let's see if there's any flag to grab. And here we go, the local.txt file. So that's it for the user part. So let's go for root. I ran the system info command, which tells us a bit about the operating system. And you will see that this is Windows Server 2008 Standard Service Pack 1. So it's really, really ancient. And there are a lot of exploits to go to root here. The tricky part is basically finding one that already works on 2008, because the most ones you'll find probably target newer versions of Windows. And there's also another kind of tricky thing here, which is that if you run set pro, you'll see that this is an x86 box. So lots of exploits are x64, and you can't really use them without compiling them for a different version. Yeah, so that's it about the environment, basically. One more thing that's interesting is that if we check our privileges, we see that our user has the SeImpersonate Privilege, which can be exploited on basically any version of Windows. And one of the exploits that already works on Windows Server 2008 is the Juicy Potato exploit. And I'm just going to grab a precompiled version here from a repository I found on GitHub. Usually you would compile it yourself, so you make sure there's nothing strange going on in the binary, right? In this case, since this is a CTF box, I don't care as much, but definitely if you do it on real engagement, make sure you compile it yourself and check the source, right? And with the Juicy Potato exploit, there's one thing you always have to keep in mind. Basically, you have this website here. I think it was the author, I'm not sure. But the Juicy Potato exploit needs a class ID, and this class ID changes with the operating system version, so we have to pick a correct one for our operating system. It has Windows Server 2008 here, so we can grab one from here, right? So maybe just the first one. We could try that. But first of all, let's connect again via FTP, because we need some way to upload the file, right? Let's just use FTP, it's the easiest one. Here we got our file. Let's just see if we can run it, confirm that it works. Yeah, we get the usage instructions. So now let's try to construct the payload. First of all, of course, we want to call it. Then we need this class ID from the website. Just going to paste that here. The first ID you try doesn't always work, right? You have to see if you can find another one that works, maybe if the first one doesn't. For T, we just say to try both methods. We have to give it some port, it doesn't matter. And then we have to tell it which binary to run. And we are just going to run our nc.exe again. And we give it as an argument, of course, our IP address, our port, and tell it to run cmd. So let's exit that, start a listener here. And if everything goes well, we should get a system shell. So let's try that. Here we go. It worked. And we got our system shell. So let's go to the admin desktop. And here we find our proof.txt, and this basically finishes the box. If you want to see a video of a specific box, please let me know in the comments. And other than that, thank you for watching and see you next week.